Hi friends, today I am repainting. I created this short the other day and a lot of you asked me about it, if I could do a regular tutorial. So that's what I'm going to do today. It was pretty, fairly simple if you have a filbert brush. Filbert brushes are awesome. They make painting like literally a no thinker for me. Let me turn on my other light here. There we go. These are my brushes. I don't know if there's any more left. There might be maybe 3 left. So this is the filbert brush. And as you can see, just the tip of it looks like a petal already. The other thing I did in this painting is I used the side of it quite a bit. That's the brush I'm going to go ahead and use. And then I think I'll go ahead and pull out my 8 round, just if I want to maybe add in a few thinner lines. Okay, but any filbert brush will do. Princeton has some filbert brushes, so any filbert brush will do. So I'm going to be painting on my Artisto pads. As you know, I love these. I just started a new one. They're 140-pound cold press. I will list this one Holidays 2024, and they've just got a great texture. I've been actually tearing them out recently and gifting some of the paintings I've been doing. I will also be using my Paul Rubens student grade paint set. Love this paint set. Can't say enough about it. I mean, just look at those gorgeous colors. The only difference between these and the Paul Rubens professional set is these are not going to have quite the light fastness, but the colors are fantastic. And another thing here is, if you notice, I'm just spritzing them. I'm not really creating puddles. I'm not putting too much water, just enough to kind of give them a little waking up. And it just takes a minute. I'm going to let them sit there. I've got my 2 wells of water. Really important, have your wash and your rinse water ready, because watercolors are so transparent. You want to make sure you're getting all that color out of them before you start, when you switch to each color. All right. So what I'm going to start with first is I will start up here. And if you notice, this is kind of a zigzag pattern or almost a triangle pattern, which I love. Those are going to be my main focal points. I'll be working kind of damp and damp. So I'm just going to wet my brush here. Let me see if I can pan out just a tiny bit so you can maybe see my water. I constantly, hold on one second here. So I am constantly dabbing my brush. When I get my brush wet, I pick up my paint, and a lot of times I will use my palette. So today I'm going to be using this yellow. This is the CAD yellow. And then I will put it in. I'm going to use this palette actually. They're both Meaden palettes, by the way, which I love. I love the Meaden palettes. So this is my CAD yellow. Let me push this over. And I'm just going to put it into my palette. Anything with CAD in it, by the way, is going to be pretty opaque, which means it's not going to be quite as translucent and pretty strong in color. So you want to water this down a bit. And then what I'm going to start doing is just using the side and flattening out my brush. I'm resting my hand on its side on my paper, and I'll just start with the main bud at the top here. So using the side of my brush, the tip of the brush there, and creating kind of like a bud, but then I'm going to go in and create some sides. So this is where I'm using the side of the brush, and it just naturally makes these wonderful marks here. But the really fun part is I'm going to go in and pick up some of that pink on my palette and tap in. I think on this one I might have actually used some of the Viridian. So scraping off or tap, tap, tap to get rid of some of that excess paint. Yeah, that's, I think, the color I used here. And just damp and damp, letting that flow. So I've got that. Now I'm going to go ahead and go into more of that yellow, and I'm going to put a flower over here, kind of the same technique. I'll use this part of my brush so flat to make the main petal here. And then as I start moving around the outer edges, I'm turning my brush more so the petals are a little bit thinner, like that. Because the petals in front are going to be a little bit flatter. Now I'll add in that orange, just kind of towards the bottom of the petals here. And as you see, I'm using the side of my brush, just like that. Now I'll go in, wash and rinse my brush, go back to that yellow. I'll add a little bit more in there, and I'm going to do this one over here. So again, I start with the flat of my brush to get a wider petal. And then as I start moving around to the sides of my flower, I'm going to start twisting my brush on its side. Just like that. And now picking up some of that orange and dabbing that in on the side of my brush. And just letting it kind of flow there. Now this is a good time. I will also go in and add in a tiny bit of the brown. So rinse my brush. Pick up either the sienna, if you have this Paul Rubens MeiLiang palette, or some type of brown there. And I'm just gonna go into the center and kind of tap in here, just to make it look like it's within the flower. Now this one, because it's on its side, I'm going to turn my brush on the side and do this type of thing. So it's almost like they're spraying out. Isn't that pretty? Now wash and rinse my brush really good because it has brown in it. And I'm going to go into my green. Now the typical green I use is a mix between the sap green, and this is just happens to be the green I like. So, you know, you may have a green that you like, and that's perfectly fine to use that. I like it sometimes to be just a little bit darker, so I might add in just a tiny bit of olive green. And now I go in while this is wet, and again, I'm twisting my brush back and forth because I want to get some of that bleed there. So there we go. Now this is where it can be really fun, and this can make such beautiful leaves. Again, I'm going to be dabbing some leaves like this. It's a perfect leaf. 1, 2, 1, 2. And then as I move up, they might get a little thinner. And this is where you kind of need to use your eye and say, where does it look like I might need a little bit of height, or maybe coming in here. If you want to do a thicker leaf, you can do 2 strokes, 1, 2, like that. Or you can just apply pressure. So play with this brush, turning it back and forth. And I'll pick up a little bit of a darker green and maybe tap into some of these leaves, just to give it some interest. And now it feels rather tight and small, so that's why I came in and added in these little buds. So I'm gonna pick up some more of that reddish orange. It could be vermilion, it could be orange red. I pick up some paint and then tap it off to get a little bit of the extra, and now I start going and creating these little buds. Now this is quite a bit redder than I went the first time, so I can add some water, tap off, and now just, where do I feel like I need to kind of guide my eye? And that's basically what I did here. Now, while those are wet, I'm also going to kind of go in there, different value here, meaning I have a little more water, so it's a little bit lighter, and I'll pick up some of that yellow and let that mix in there. So picking up the yellow in my palette. And these little buds are going to kind of lead our eye around. Now I might even want to have another one come out here, or I could even put in one more flower over there. Pick up a little bit more of that yellow. Tap, 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 tap off some of that water. And maybe do a little bud right here. A little bit of the orange. And now wash, rinse, pick up some green, adding in a stem in the middle of those. And there you go. That's basically what I did on the other painting. The only thing I might add in, and you could use this brush, but I'm going to pick up my 8 round, and I'm just going to go into some of that brown and go right into the middle here. You don't have to do this, and just very light pressure. And this is quite thick, so I've probably got 80% pigment, 20% water here. And adding in. Now these I don't really have to do something like that. I could even add in a few here, which kind of gives it some height too. And there you go, I'm basically done. So I hope you give this a try and play with, do first maybe a whole sheet of brush strokes using, let me grab my filbert real quick. A whole sheet of brush strokes with, let me find my paper that I can practice here on, of the brush strokes playing with your filbert brush, so you kind of get used to things you can do with it. So going back again to using the side of my brush like that, which is kind of naturally makes a flower petal, then play with pushing down more and a fatter petal. Now play with that same using the side of the brush, but little C's for the side of the petal. And then a little bit more pressure. Thin, thick, thin, thick. And just notice the kind of brush strokes that you get here. When I did the center of these flowers, I started with the flat part of the brush, like this. So you can practice those. And then you could practice a couple together. And then maybe some little C strokes. As you come out, turn your brush to the side. That's a beautiful little bud. Now, while it's just shiny, we're going to go in, rinse our brush, and pick up a tiny bit of that red and tap that into there. And let that kind of spread while this is shiny, no puddles. And look at these perfect little flowers we get. So play with this brush. You can also practice your stems using the edge. Let me get a little bit more green paint here. So this brush is really versatile, and there's your stems. Then you can go in there as well and add in some leaves and play with the different leaves. Something like that. Maybe you want some fatter leaves. So 1, 2, there's a fatter leaf. So maybe a whole page of these, maybe that type of leaf that comes down. So you have this really fun edge. You could even do both sides like that. And then here's the other edge. So that's another type of leaf. So just turn your leaf, play with it. I mean, your filbert brush, play with it and see what you think. And again, this is my set. It was very limited edition. We sold out. We won't be doing them again, but I think there may be 3 sets left. You get it in a beautiful gift box. But if not, use the Princeton Velvet Touch filbert is wonderful as well. I kind of designed this after that. It's snappy. It's kind of soft. It's not too snappy. And I really love these brushes. So there you go. I hope you give this a try and have some fun with it. Just play with this brush and then go ahead and go in and create this fun little floral here. And remembering to add in the greens and the reds when this is just shiny, no puddles, just kind of shiny, and you'll get this beautiful flow. All right, everybody, have fun. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, if you are a beginner and you're kind of piecemealing all these tutorials together, I do have one program, online course for beginners, and it goes all the way through getting to know your brushes, how to use them, brush strokes. We create a fun little floral at the end, and it's all in one course. All right, everybody, I will see you all soon. Happy painting, and thank you for being here, a part of my community.